just get on a little, there's a little wooden box there, you know. We'd kneel, Marvin and me, we'd kneel there and be praying, and I'd think, well, how long does it take to pray? I didn't, you know, I don't know what they're saying or anything. And then and somebody'd come to the door, and they'd stop and go. And I remember thinking another time, I thought, oh, hope somebody comes to the door, because that'll stop them from praying, and we can quit.
And who were they praying for?
I don't know, all of us, you know, just praying for us because we were
Granny's
there.
mom, is that who you
Granny's
said?
grandma,
Oh.
her grandma.
Wow.
Her name was Hip.
Hip.
Last name was Hip.
Oh.
They're the ones that was the Nazarene preacher.
Yeah.
How long were they preachers for, and where at?
I don't know, because I don't, you know, Mother and Daddy, neither one talked about their ancestors. I couldn't go back and know anything about names and stuff and all that. Bernice just loved that kind of stuff, and she studied and went in the Honies and went back as far as she could go and learned all that stuff, and Barbara too. You couldn't ask him whose name was so and so and so, and he couldn't do it, but they didn't thought that was real important. But Anime, neither one could. Well, we didn't live where they did. That was all in Oklahoma. And we'd go to see them and stuff. But when they lived in Grandma, when she was sick and died and stuff, that you could go down the back alley and just walk just a little bit, and there's a little bitty store there. We could go back there and get, for a penny, you could get a thing of bubble gum. We'd go get bubble gum. But they had mills instead of, besides pennies, you know? And you had so many mills made a penny. And I had some mills, and I don't know what. I went back there, I told Mom once, and they said, we don't have enough. And I started to cry. I thought, well, what's wrong? I have a whole bunch of it, but it wasn't enough for a penny even. They gave it to me anyway.
Mills?
Mills. There was, it was less than a penny. So many
Really?
mills made a penny.
Wow. I don't know there ever was such a thing.
They're real thin, real lightweight little things, you know, smaller than a
Wow.
penny.
They made them out of aluminum, and it's about half as big as a dime.
Wow.
I never heard of that.
Me either.
You call it a mail?
A
Mill.
Mill. So many mills made a penny.
You don't remember how many?
No, I don't. I wasn't even in school, neither one of us were, but we would go there with Mother and stuff. That's when we lived in Colorado, mostly we went there. That's when we lived there in Colorado. There was snow, but it was Easter time. And they was talking about the Easter, but Mother we didn't have anything, you know, but the neighbors did, and they wanted us to have an Easter basket. So they put an Easter basket on the front porch, but Mother said, I think you better go look, but it might have come. And we opened that door, and would you believe a wild rabbit went hopping across just as we did that. And we believed, man, that told us.
Sealed the deal right there.
Mother said, she said, I just about choked. Because she saw the lady come and bring it when it was, it was one big basket. That was for both of us.
Too great. Wow. So how long did you live in Colorado?
Not very long.
What was Papa doing there?
The trucks, that's all he ever did,
Okay.
was trucks. He had, in fact, when it was in Fraser, Colorado, there's so much snow and stuff, they had to get out in the morning and get under the truck, build a little fire under some part of the truck to warm it up enough that it
Warm
would
enough.
start, and they could
Wow.
go and do, you know, and they'd go out and that was where, when it was summer, we was there when there wasn't any snow around, and Marvin and me found an old dead tree laying along somewhere there out beside the little old one-room house that we lived in, and he had got hold of some matches somehow, and he was striking them, and he caught that old piece of wood on fire. Well, it scared us absolutely to pieces. We went screaming and hollering for Daddy. What have we done? Look how it's burning up. And he came and put it, but he balled us out and took the matches. And I said, you don't play with matches. That's too dangerous. You could have burned about the whole forest, he said.
So where'd you go from Colorado? Where'd you move to from there?
He started at one point, I think it was from then, that he worked actually building fences across the New Mexico desert, dry desert. We lived in a tent and followed him along, him and some other people that build these.
I didn't know that one.
From
Yeah.
Colorado to New Mexico.
Yeah,
Ooh.
yeah. just most of the time it was just dusty wind. You couldn't even see anything. They had a great big old tractor of a thing, and it was there. We wanted to go out and play on it. Daddy said, "No, you better not go out there." Said yesterday there was a man and he found a rattlesnake in there. Said, "So you better not." So we didn't, and we didn't have anything to play. No toys, no nothing. Lived in a big old house for a while there. But he followed him, and he had it was just him and us then, our family, and in this tent. The wind was blowing, and he was holding the tent, the pole up of the tent, because it was falling down on all of us in the middle of the night.
Oh my goodness.
I remember Mother saying, "Oh."
So how old were you? Like 6 or 8 or something? Or?
Probably. It wasn't in school. No, it was less than that, because we wasn't even starting to be in school.
Oh.
I was 3 when Grandma died, and we went back there, and she was. But I remember, boy, I remember everything at 3. That big old house
Wow.
is a big old house, and they had real pretty red velvet couch and chair in the living room. And I went in somewhere. Well, I don't know why I did it, but I went in and got into Mother's purse, and got lipstick out of it, and I put lipstick all over me, and it got all over my hands too. And then I went walking in there, and that's the way they do, you know. And Mother screamed, and so I stuck my hands in that couch down between, trying to hide them, so she wouldn't see it.
Perfect plan.
She come running and grabbing me. Oh, I don't know why I even knew that it was there. She hardly ever wore it, but she had some in her purse. And her brother, Mother's brother, lived there at home part of the time, Delma, and he had a squirrel. He had a pen out in the back, you know, and he'd go out there and feed it, and we'd go look at it, and it'd get out. He'd get out all the time, and he'd have to go down the street with a corn cob, you know, and he'd find it, and he'd get it to come back, and finally get it back in the pen. He did that a few times, and finally, I guess he couldn't fix it or something, and he just gave it up and let it go, let it be gone. We thought that was really something to go and look at that little squirrel.
Did you end up going from New Mexico to up there in the White Mountains where you were at, or somewhere else between there?
Yeah, I think we was. No, there wasn't anywhere else. We went up there.
McNary, that's what it was.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We lived at McNary and lived in a one room for a little while, and then we lived in the boxcar, and that was good because it was big. It was insulated and stuff better and everything. We had a good fire in there. And then just before he quit, the mill quit, and we left, we got a house, and it had a bathroom with a tub. I remember thinking that was the best thing in the world to go take it was a clawfoot tub, you know, and we took a
Indoors
bath.
instead of outdoors?
Yeah. We got to take a bath in that tub by ourselves. Otherwise, Mother put us in a tub, a round tub, and we'd have one the other, and he'd say, "I get to be first," because he said, "If she's first, she'll pee in the water." And I thought, well, I would not. And I thought to myself later, he probably did, and that's the reason he knew that I might or so. Oh. But that was when it was in the
When was the
boxcar.
Depression when he had to carry those cross ties up in the railroad?
I don't know when he did that.
Depression was in the 30s, right? Early 30s?
Well, the Depression was on, and the reason that when they first got married, then the Depression came. They had a house, a pretty little house. She's got a picture of it, and they lost the house. They lost everything that was in the bank. And they had to just get in their car and take what they had and just leave. And I don't know where they went there, but it was hard times. I mean, there was no money. He would work at anything just to get money to buy some food for that day or that night, you know, for us. And
I remember I thought it was you, maybe he's the one who told me that he was watching him carry those cross ties up a board and stack them inside the railroad car. And he said he wanted to work, and so he went in over and asked the guy. He was watching them how they were doing it. He had to get kind of a rhythm going to bounce on the board. The guy says, I said, "I don't think you can't do this work." He said, "I believe I can." And so he said, "All right, if you can carry it, you can do it." So he went in, grabbed one of those things, and he walked up the deal and he said, "You got a job."
Wow.
It must have been him that told me that, because if you don't remember that.
I don't know where that was. It wasn't in McNary. It must have been, well, I don't know where it was. Colorado was pretty. It was cold. All I remember is cold, cold, cold. Remember just snow and tall trees and very cold.
I remember he said
But it was
about-
green and pretty, you know. But we didn't start to school until we was in McNary, and then we was in Flagstaff just for oh, I don't know, just a little bit, and we both started to school, but I don't even remember going there one day, and then we moved to McNary, and then we started school there, and I had a horrible start and a horrible teacher. She didn't like me, and I didn't like her. She had too many kids. She couldn't teach us all, and I couldn't do any of the work, and I was behind because I don't know how long I was out in between the moving and all the stuff like that, but I didn't know what all the other kids knew at that time, and I felt awful. I was scared, and she was an older woman, and she had false teeth, and her false teeth, she didn't ever brush them, and between her teeth was stuff that looked like meal or mush or something horrible all across like that, and I thought,
Nasty.
and she'd look at you and then show her teeth, you know, and I couldn't say what, the word what, and she got me up the first day I was in school. I mean, I hadn't gone to school enough to know one word from the other. She got me up in front of the school and shook me like this, and she said, "Say what? Say what?" And I said it, and then I went on. But then after that, I was so scared I couldn't learn anything, and I had to go twice to that whole year. You know, I had to go. I failed.
With the same teacher?
Yeah, same teacher.
Oh, my goodness.
She taught
Awful.
she taught first and second, A first and B first, and then second, and then she taught part of the third. But I was in part of the third when we left there and moved downtown. But I didn't learn anything. I didn't know how to spell, and nobody helped me. Nobody told me anything. I come down there and I got straight fives. They graded 1 through 5. 5 was failing, and I got 5s all the way across. But they didn't help me then. They just sent me to the next grade. And when I did that my whole, always, high school, all of it. I couldn't do any of the work hardly at all that was there because I didn't know. I didn't know any of it. I didn't know arithmetic. I didn't know anything. And they liked me, so they just passed me on through. They thought I was nice. They just passed me on through. Yeah. One teacher, this friend of mine, the one that was in our wedding even, she was a really nice girl, and she's our English teacher. He was real nice, and I had to write a big, long thing or something. And he told her, he said, "She's nice, but he said she can't spell." Nice girl, she just cannot spell. And she told me what he said.
Dad, what year did you guys move out here? I don't even remember.
He was born out here. But
He was?
you-
We
what year?
moved around
26,
in
yeah.
1940.
No, well, I mean out to Arizona to Tucson, because you're born out by the dairy over there in 26. When did the whole family come here from?
Oklahoma, I think.
Yeah.
One of you's
Arkansas.
Arkansas, one of them's Oklahoma.
Yeah,
Okies and Arkies, I remember.
yeah.
I think Bob was born in Tempe, so he must have lived there for a while.
Yeah, but you were born here though. You always said you were born over there or
Mhm.
off of.
Something happened, and they was in Tempe for a little while because I asked somebody else, and they said, yeah, he was actually born in Bob was actually born in Tempe, but we lived here most of the time in Tucson.
I was born out by James Station
Yeah, yeah.
in a railroad car.
In the car?
No, it
Oh.
was the railroad signals station that was alongside the tracks.
Hmm.
Somebody lived there, and when mother was pregnant with me, she asked her to come and stay with them so she could take care of Mom.
Oh.
So I was born out at James Station.
There's all born home except was Barbara or Beverly was the only one that she went to the hospital with. It was Beverly at least, but she went to the hospital with just one of them, and I can't remember why they said, but she did. He drove her in there. Your dad drove her to the hospital.
In
She
a
had the
milk
baby and brought her
truck?
back home.
He borrowed a milk truck to take Mom to the hospital
Yeah.
with one of the girls. And I was old enough to remember that, so it must have been Barbara.
Well, it could have been Beverly.
Because Beverly was younger than Barbara, right?
Yeah, she was just.
Yeah, she was the
baby.
youngest one.
She drowned when she was 2.
She was drowned.
she
No,
was
I don't
3.
think she was even 2. Was she that old?
I'd always heard 3.
Oh.
Hmm.
She's just a baby, but.
The
She-
worst part of that was that Mom's the one that found her,
Oh.
Mhm.
floated off down the ditch, hung up in some weeds.
Hmm.
Well, she was just outside the window there playing, and she was watching her and stuff. And then she went and looked, and she wasn't there. So she thought, oh, the ditch. So she went straight over to the ditch,
Mm.
straight to the ditch, and started walking down the ditch. And so
Hmm.
she like never got over that.
Hmm.
Every time she'd drive by the cemetery, she'd cry.
Hmm.
Beautiful little blonde.
Now, didn't the story I heard about Papa was that he thought he had heartburn, so he left the field and came home and started doing sit-ups and
No,
stuff,
No,
trying
he
to get
just
his
came home. He just
Papu.
came
I mean
home. Yeah.
Papu.
He just came home. It was just time to come home. He stopped by our house almost every day on the way home, just wringing wet with sweat. And
Yeah.
Ronald tell, Daddy, if you don't stop working out there in the middle of the day out there, we're going to find you laying out there in that watermelon patch. And, oh, Shaw, and he'd say, and he'd drink a glass of iced tea. Shaw, and then he'd walk on.
Shaw.
Then he'd walk on over to their house where they lived. You know, he walked over. It was a nice house, the nicest that they had ever had, and some relatives had come to visit, came through, so they wanted to show them through the house, show them their nice new house. They showed them all through the house, and he went like that and everything, and then he went in and sat down in his lounge chair, and she was saying goodbye to them at the door, and they left. Then she turned around, and he just left.
Hmm.
But he did think he had heart. He thought he had indigestion, so he had a bar across the top of where you could do pull-ups, you know, and so he was doing that before even, thinking that would get rid of it, you know.
The heartburn.
Maudine said and they said, well, it was his heart, but she said I know good and well it was potassium that he
Yeah.
didn't have enough of.
Oh, I'm sweating too much out there.
Sweating.
Yeah.
Oh, sweating.
Hmm.
And he never took water with him or anything, but he'd break open a watermelon and eat it and go on, and thinking that's enough. Strong man, I don't know, but it was just too much.
Dad, wasn't he the one that was riding a horse and fell off right into a saguaro or barrel cactus or something? What
Choya
is
cactus,
Choya cactus when he's hunting?
chasing rabbit.
Ch-
with a greyhound.
oh, with a
Greyhound?
greyhound and a horse?
He was riding the horse, but he had the greyhounds chasing the rabbit,
Yeah.
and he was following
Mm.
them. And the rabbit dodged and went on the opposite side of the cactus from where he thought he was going.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of going on where he was, the horse stopped and jumped the cactus. My dad fell off it right on his head like this.
Mm.
He put his arm up in front of his eyes.
Yeah. Mm.
He went. How did he get up to the mountains? These mountains over here when he went up there and found the honey. He knew there was honey there, and he went up and got a bunch of honey.
I found out deer hunting.
But he went back then and got it.
Yeah,
Got some kind of container or something, and come back with a bunch of honey that he'd found in a.
Without getting stung?
Well, I guess I don't know.
yeah. I forget what he put on himself to protect him from the bees.
Yeah.
You stole their honey.
Huh. Remember that story, Dad, where you drove the blind guy drove the car down out of the mountain while you were feeding gas into the hood? Who was that?
Tom Stout.
Tom Stout.
Well, I was flying racing pigeons in though,
What mountain was that?
on the other side of Tucson Mountains.
Oh.
I haven't heard this
We
story.
never had a car that was any good ever.
Tell that story. Gayla
Always
hadn't heard it.
old cars we always had.
Dad, tell Gayla how that happened, because I tried to tell her, but I don't know if I remember right.
I mean, about him.
Yeah, what happened? Why
how
you had to...
how it broke down and everything, and then what you did.
Yeah, the pigeons had to fly over that Tucson mountain to get home. So we trained them over there so they'd know to go over the mountain.
Mm.
And I took them over there and took this Tom Stout with me. And he took his pigeons too. And we just went over the mountain and stopped right at the base of the mountain on the other side. Car wouldn't go. So I
Where'd you
said,
get
Tom, you're gonna have to drive. And I'm sitting up on the fender saying, a little bit left, a little bit right. We finally got him over the mountain.
Well, didn't you say he was feeding, you were feeding gas in the carburetor?
Yeah, yeah. That's what she was doing.
Yeah, you said something broke, either the fuel line or the pump or something, and you had to feed it by hand or something.
Yeah.
And he was literally blind, and you were
Oh, yeah.
telling him.
Didn't even have any eyeballs.
Oh
Yeah, he was like,
gosh!
yeah, he was in the
war, he
army.
got shot right through the
Through
side
the
of
head.
the head.
Got both
Wow.
of his eyes.
Oh wow!
Blew both eyes out.
He sold insurance. He made
Wow.
money. He lived. He did real well. He was a pretty nice looking guy, but
But you directed him by just saying a little left, a little right.
Yeah. Of course, we're only going up 1 or 2 miles an hour. Yeah.
got it out to where somebody could come help you, or what? I forgot the rest of it.
Well, after we got up over the mountain, I could drive.
Well, but it started then because you put gas in it or something, and then it got started.
Well, yeah, you could have, how come we didn't drive to begin with? You told Marty you were putting gas in the carburetor.
Yeah, that's what he did.
That's why because he couldn't put gas in the carburetor, so you had to put it in there so he could, and he'd drive. So you don't remember what happened after you got on the other side, because you couldn't drive then because you still no gas in the carburetor.
Somebody must have came and found you.
Yeah, somebody came to help me or did something. I don't know. We had so many old cars. Buy them for almost nothing. And one car, what was it you used in it instead of gas?
Oh my
To
goodness!
see if
Diesel fuel.
it was. What was that old
Old Packard.
old thing?
So I was asking Barbara how you guys met, and you guys seem to have a disagreement. But you either met at the skating rink or met at church. Which was the
No, I didn't go to church until after I met him.
some lady named Percy. What was her name? Something Percy or some. Barbara told me, I can't remember, that was a friend of yours or something, or Dad was supposed to meet her and end up liking you or something. I don't remember what it was, something like that. But
Barbara didn't know. She
Well, that hers.
was at the skating rink, and I was with this girlfriend, and him and his boyfriend that would end up being in our wedding. They wanted to take us home. They will because I live walking distance from the rink, and they was going to take us home. But he was looking at her, and what's his name was looking at me, and but I wasn't paying any attention to him. I was paying attention. It was just the other way. And Ron said, later he told me that, and he said, but I thought, well, I guess that's all right then, however you want it. But and then we dated then, the 4 of us and stuff.
How old were you?
15,
15.
because we went together for 2 years. I was married, but I didn't finish school. It was July of the summer. They wouldn't let you go. If you got married, they wouldn't let you go back to school till you'd missed a whole year.
Oh wow!
And so I couldn't. And then Mother and Daddy moved, and I didn't.
And then Barbara said you had the only car in the family, so you would drive them to church on Sunday night, and
That's
then
before I was married.
yeah, and then stop by to mom's house and
To leave me off.
to
and then,
leave her off, and she said and he would just take entirely too long saying goodbye. but we never could say anything because he had the
Yeah.
only car.
That's the way it was. And I used to feel so awful. I'd tell him, well, no, he thought it was okay. Just wait a little longer. That last house that we lived in before. And Ann started to school there. There was a school right across the road from us, grade school. And she started school, and she remember hearing us say, was part Indian, that we had Indian blood in it. So she told the school teacher she was half Indian. She was blonde as she could be. She told the teacher she was half Indian.
What was this?
And, and Mother went to school then one day, and she told her, she said, I knew it was wrong, but anyway, she told me she was half Indian. But they moved straight from there to California on the coast, and I was there for a little while, and then they moved inward, and it was it. And one year while I was there, we lived in, or that's what they did, but when Mother and Daddy and us, we moved to Oregon for a year. I was in the 7th grade, and or in the 8th grade, and we walked to school. It was a real pretty little town. Ann says it's not, and I said, well, I thought it was then. I thought it was a nice little town. there was a river that went through the town, and so the town was divided, and there was a bridge, and it would flood sometimes. The bridge, you couldn't go across the bridge then.
Hmm.
But anyway,
So which what?
First night we spent together in a little old chicken house and a barn. Right to the side of that big overpass there on Miracle Mile.
Yeah.
Used to be a hatchery there. And they'd dump all their eggs that didn't hatch in a dump. And you go out and part of them would go ahead and hatch.
Oh wow.
And anyway, we stayed in that thing one day.
of a big old house that was up there on the hill, like.
No, there's a little bitty chicken shack of a house by the chicken hatchery there on Miracle Mile. And the cockroaches
Oh,
crawled
that was
all
up
over
on Number Hill. Yeah, that was a big old house, and that's where Mother and Daddy left when we lived in that. And they gave us all that furniture. It was all in that house and everything. And Mother gave me everything. She gave me her spices. She gave me her.
Sound like there was
everything.
another house before that though. What Dad's saying.
No, when that was the first house.
Well, maybe he remembers it different.
Well,
What
yeah, but-
were you telling a story? What were you saying about it? About the chickens?
We lived in it one day, and we told the guy the next morning, that thing is full of cockroaches. We can't live there. And he only charged us like $25 a month. So we said, well, we can't take it.
And I just knew I was going to take roaches with me and all of our
Cockroaches,
boxes of stuff that was there.
I mean, you're sleeping in bed. It's dark, you know.
Yeah.
Cockroaches come crawling across your face.
Oh,
They weren't the big ones; they was the little ones. But there's just tons of them in that house.
I
You know how at night and you turn the light on if there's anybody
Scatter
they
everywhere.
go hiding and behind everything. That's what they do. And so we
We
didn't
stayed in it
know.
one day. That's all.
How do we move? What do we have to move our stuff in? 'Cause we had all that furniture, those beds and stuff that they left with us, and we had everything, couches and everything. We have everything there.
I
They left
remember your
with
mother
nothing.
gave us 2 3/4 sized beds, and we put them together.
Yeah.
And so and her mother came. She said, "You know that's not the way those beds are made."
And is that when you moved up on a mountain where all the rattlesnakes were?
Oh no, that was when Dale was little. Dale was a baby. We moved up there. That was a beautiful home at one time. Everything in it was like in the bathroom was everything. The tub and the sink, everything was green. And in the kitchen, it was another color. Anyway, it had been a real nice house with hardwood floors and everything. But you drive up there and there was a driveway, and you drive around and then go. And college guys people had gone up there and they'd taken all the light fixtures and everything they could take, but they'd go up there and party. And so we got it all fixed and painted and fixed and moved in and everything, and he'd be off at work. And here they'd come driving up there, and
Oh,
they
jeez.
didn't like it, the idea that was, so they'd honk their horn just as loud as they could, but they'd still make the circle and go on back down. But I don't know how long we lived there, but there were so many snakes that we couldn't let Dale down on. I couldn't lay him on the floor unless I put a big quilt down and watch real close where he's at.
I don't think we even lived there a year.
Yeah, we did.
Up
We
in
lived
the-
there a summer, and we
up
lived
in
there.
that mountain.
Uh-huh. We built all those pits. We lived there at least a year because you had. That's when that Muggins, the goat, had the goat, the baby goat.
Well, that only takes 3 months.
Well, I can't help it. You built all the pins that you had and everything. They wanted to. They changed their mind. They wanted to build. They wanted the house for their own. This
They wanted
guy's
somebody
dad.
to live in it so the college kids couldn't tear it up. They
They
wanted-
pretty well did, but still.
Down about a quarter of a mile from the house was a gate with 2 big posts on each side and a lock on the gate. Had to stop every time you come in or out and unlock that gate.
Yeah.
And you could look out the big window down, and there was a place, a water tank of a thing, and the deer would come. There was mountains on both sides, and they'd come to every night, come down this way, and they'd get a drink, and then they'd go up the other side. Somehow or another, they'd get around, and they'd do the same thing every time. And wild
Ma-
pigs did the same
A
thing.
mountain lion killed a deer right at that
Yeah.
gate one time.
I told Mother and Daddy, I thought Daddy's going to die. Oh, I thought that.
Well, it was kind of dumb. Should have never lived there at all.
No, that was hard. That was hard, but it could have been nice if they. But they fixed it
where
up.
were you working at the railroad then, or?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'd go to work and she's staying there by herself.
With the mountain lions, and pink rattlesnakes.
Wow. And 2 little kids, one a baby.
Mm-hmm. Carrie was all right, but but Dale.
Did
was
you know how to
just
shoot?
Me?
Yeah.
I don't know. We didn't have a gun, but I wasn't scared. I wasn't nervous and scared of people or anything like that. I just didn't like the scorpions and the snakes and the stuff like that.
Yeah.
We'd go somewhere, we'd come home, and you had to up against it was a steps, and there was a wall right beside you till you got to the door. And every time we'd go, there'd be tarantulas, like if and I couldn't stand that. And then somebody said, well, I'd turn the light on in the back porch. And we had it so they couldn't. He put rubber all the way around; they couldn't get in. So turn the light on, and the lights off in the house, and you'd sit there. And the biggest scorpions you ever saw, and they were dark colored, black light. They'd come all in there and everything, and getting other bugs and stuff and eating them. And I couldn't stand it. I couldn't go to sleep till he'd come home. And then they said, well, cats, they'll get them. They'll get you a bunch of cats. Well, where did we get this? Red Monema had some cats. Or somebody brought a couple of cats home, but they didn't bother them. They were too big. They were too small of cats. They didn't hurt one of the bugs. There's too many of them, too big.
That's the worst place we ever lived.
Yeah, I remember one day I was in the kitchen, and we had a thing that would kill the bugs. It killed them real good, and then they outlawed it, and you couldn't do it anymore. But I was shredding carrots. I was peeling carrots like this, and I looked, and one of the peelings moved, and I thought, I looked again. It was